Assalamu alaikum and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to SZABIST. With a unique new idea, again today we are having a very unique program, as we are hosting different programs for the learning of community, for society, for our students, faculty members. This is also part of that. Today we are going to introduce you two distinguished guests who are come across the world and right here from the Hollywood, which is a big, not less than biggest thing for us, and we are going to learn more and more from them. As you know that Hollywood in the central region of Los Angeles, it's a famous world, it's a symbol of iconic film industry and studios. It's the world's capital for entertaining and the dream destination for anyone who desperately seek fortune and fame. Today, we have two of these iconic guests with us. At my right side, Maria Raquel Bozzi. Maria, let me introduce them. Maria Raquel Bozzi is the Senior Director of Film Education and International Initiatives at Film Independent. In this capacity, she is responsible for conceptualizing, planning, and implementing Independent. In this capacity, she is responsible implementing all of Film Independent's education curriculum to serve the needs of filmmakers. Under her leadership, the Film Education Department produces over 150 events a year, bringing together over 250 guests, speakers representing the best professionals in the independent film community. My other guest is Alix Madigan. Alix most recently produced Veena Suits, The Lie of Blumhouse, as well as 1982, an Arabic language film. Before that, she produced It Happened in LA, written, starring, and directed by Michelle Morgan, which appeared at the Sundance Film Festival in the next section in 2017. So let's begin with our both of the guests. So thank you very much, ma'am. We would like to know about the Hollywood, as it is the iconic film industry for all of for the whole world, and now people are, after that, they are coming to the names for the Bollywood, Lollywood, and Chinawood. So kindly please tell us about the filmmaking. If we can get some of the few important points of the filmmaking. What is the business of the film? Kindly, please.
Yeah, sure. I hate to disappoint you. Yes, we're coming from Hollywood, but there are other types of films being made in Hollywood that are not necessarily the big studio films you may see in the multiplex here in Islamabad. A lot of filmmaking happens outside of the studios in the United States. And the organization I am here representing, Film Independent, congregates a lot of those filmmakers that are making films outside of the studio system. And these are the films that are dealing with a lot of characters that are not perfect, that are talking a lot about struggles of people, everyday people, so to speak. This organization also has an international program called Global Media Makers that seeks to serve filmmakers from across the world. And we are here in Islamabad and in Pakistan, because we'll be visiting other cities, to meet a lot of filmmakers that may be able to participate in this program that is called Global Media Makers, that we run with the United States State Department in Los Angeles. And we are also here to meet and get an understanding of how the film industry works here in Pakistan, and what the needs and the challenges and opportunities are for filmmakers here. And as part of that, we also look to see how filmmakers are trained. So hence we're here at the university. I'm so happy to be here. And with me is Alix Madigan, who represents that great talent of filmmakers that work outside of the studio systems, and she could really explain how filmmaking at the level that she works happens in the United States. So we are in Hollywood, but we're representing other type of filmmaking.
Well, Alex, I would like to ask you about the filmmaking, which Maria just told us. What is that all about? Is that for the specific issues around the globe, or it is going to capture the life of different areas? What would you like to say about that?
Of course. I think that, as Maria said, most of the films that are made stateside are made under the guise of independent film. Even films that are distributed by studios, most of them are acquired after they are made and distributed in that way. So Maria and I work more in the independent arena as opposed to the studio side. Having said that, I've always been an independent filmmaker, even though the budgets that I've worked on movies have very much varied. I tend to like stories of people that are unexpected and not usually the stories that you would see as portrayed in Hollywood studio films. Stories of outsiders, different cultures, different people. I have made films internationally too, and the movie that you talked about, 1982, was filmed in Lebanon, and it'll premiere in the Toronto Film Festival this year.
And now we are going to take question answers with our distinguished guests, so that our students and faculty members who are very curious about different things of filmmaking, they can ask and learn more and more from our guests. So I would request Ma'am Zainab Dar to ask question. If Ma'am Zainab, would you like to have something to ask from our guests?
Pakistan is a very dynamic and colorful country. We are a mix of good things and relatively less good things. What do you propose that as a filmmaker, what should be reflected on a bigger screen vis-a-vis your visit to Pakistan? There are so many aspects that you see here. Some of the aspects are very positive, some of the aspects are not that positive. We as teachers or as the younger generation, because when I speak for my students also, we believe that we have shown enough melancholy on the wider screen, vis-a-vis the documentaries, vis-a-vis relatively less work has been done on the positive aspects of this country. So now that you're here, we would like to know what positivities have you seen so far in our culture throughout your visit in this country, and do you think that some of those aspects are strong enough to be reflected on the wider screen?
Yeah, I believe that the types of stories that I would like to see and the world wants to see, or at least the world I belong to, are films that reveal some sort of truth, a truth that comes from within. And I think the problem most of the time is that the stories of many countries are not told by the people from that country. Therefore, a lot of it has to do with shock value, with being relatable in the wrong way. So I feel I'm excited to come here and meet filmmakers who are doing that. Through the program that I head, the Global Media Makers, we had a call for entries for filmmakers from Pakistan, mid-career filmmakers, meaning filmmakers who already have made some films, to submit themselves as applicants for this program that is a residency in Los Angeles. And through this application process, I was really excited to see the types of work that are being made here in Pakistan. And right now I don't remember names of some of the work that I saw, but the variety was there. The types of stories that are being told was there. And actually there were some examples of filmmakers who had managed to navigate the very difficult balance between telling a story that is socially relevant and important with very colorful mise en scène and in a way with very commercial values that could transcend and tell a good story that is truthful and at the same time entertaining. So I think there's good filmmakers here that I am excited to meet, and I hope I answered your question.
No, I agree very much with what Maria said, is that I don't think we can tell stories that, that are based in your country in a realistic manner. I think only that you can tell those. But, and like, you know, like you, our country has some positive aspects and some not so positive aspects as well. I personally like stories depicted on film that that do portray an unexpected side of America that you wouldn't see. So those are the kind of stories that I like to tell in terms of my own filmmaking.
So thank you, Alex. I would like Fayaz Raja to ask something if you want, because Fayaz is also having, Fayaz Raja is basically a media person, and he is also having a very colorful, you know, collection of his own ideas and stories. And he is basically making reports on different angles of positive and all the challenges of the Pakistan. So I would like to ask Fayaz to ask some question.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much, Alex and Maria, for being here. My question is to Alex that how much the paperwork is important before going to the actual camera shoot. Please give some light on that, how much the camera work is important.
As your question, as I understand it, is how important is paperwork before?
It's about paperwork, how much the paperwork is important before going to actual shooting.
That's an excellent question. I find that paperwork is incredibly important in terms of rights of a film, particularly when it comes to distribution. So I always find it very important to, one of my most important hires that I will make as a producer is the person who will manage entertainment legal, what we call it, which will essentially, it could be a whole other class, but it will be walking through aspects such as getting all the investor paperwork done, all their agreements, and then also things like chain of title, which track where the original idea of the movie came from. You need all of this paperwork in place before you can distribute your film and sell it to a distributor. So it's important to have all that there. It's part of something called a deliverable. All that paperwork is incredibly important to have handy when you are in a very thorough and very correct way before you sell your film to distribution. So that's I can't emphasize the importance of paperwork before shooting.
Yes, Mr. Wagra, kindly introduce yourself first.
Yeah, I'm Shabbir Ahmed Wagra. I work in the state television. My question is with Alex, being an independent filmmaker. Pakistan is also one of the country which is now having that booming media industry, and especially young media professionals are coming and they are experimenting as well, especially with the independent filmmaking. But I would like that you have such a vast experience, and as I understand from your bio that one of your film went for the Academy nominations as well. So actually one of the major hurdle which we young professionals especially face is how to finance a non-commercial film. because you are an independent filmmaker, and as I understand, most of your films are non-commercial films. So can you give the tips that how we can get finances for it? Because finance is one of the big problem, that how we can, especially the students, and have very good ideas, that how they can get finances for their such projects which are non-commercial projects.
That's another excellent question. And as an independent filmmaker, raising finance for the movies that I make, and you are totally right, they're usually non-commercial, is the biggest task that I face in making a film. I would say that as an independent producer, you have to have a tremendous belief that your film will find an audience, and an audience that will be equally passionate about your movie as you are. So I think a lot of what independent producing is selling your film. I think that in order to get most of the films that I work on are independently financed, and it's equity. So it's wealthy individuals or companies, independent companies backing the films. So what I usually do is I will prep the director, the filmmaker, and work with them to present the film in the most positive and exciting light. I will prepare a lookbook, which is, I always think, very important, with images of the film. I will get my script to the best shape possible, and I will prepare a budget that will be as economical as possible. It's really the smallest amount that I feel that I can make the movie for. So once I have those all in hand, I have the selling tools to raise the financing, but you're entirely right, that's usually the most difficult aspect of my job, is to raise the financing of the film. There's no magic path to it, it's just persistence and being prepared.
From students,
Good morning, my name is Atikur Rahman. I would like to ask about the script. That is very important to understand. First of all, we need to understand the cultural values, the taboos, the issues of the society where we are going to make film or writing something. So normally it happens, the success, we actually assess the success of any film production, anything, on what basis? Either the camera work is enough, the shooting is enough, or what importance or the value should we give to the script? Or should we need to have a basic knowledge about any society? Normally it happens when we when we watch some of the reports, movies in production, and we normally feel that this is something not actually compatible with our values or our societal norms, values like this. So how would you answer that the script is importance of the script, and what are the elements that we should focus on while writing a script and working on?
I think that having a great script is probably the most important thing that you can have in your possession when you go and make a film. There's nothing more important. And someone once said something to me which I thought was very wise, which was, they had seen, I don't want to mess this up, they had seen bad movies made from good scripts, but never a good movie made from a bad script. So, and that I think really just sums it up, is that you do have to have the bare bones of a great story in order to make a really wonderful film. As far as your second question goes about the cultural relevancy of scripts, the only thing I can say is if you're making a film that's depicting a foreign culture or a situation that you're not familiar with, as a writer, I think, and a filmmaker, it's incredibly important to do as much research as you possibly can. The movie that this gentleman cited, which was nominated for an Academy Award that I worked on, was called Winter's Bone, and it took place in a very, very poor region in the United States called the Ozarks. And the filmmaker and writer moved there for a period of time to really get to know the people and so to portray that group in the most realistic way, so they wouldn't be just going there and filming them in an inauthentic light. So I hope that answers your question. I think that you just have to, in difficult societal, difference of societies, you have to portray them as honestly and as carefully and as authentically as possible.
Thank you, Alex. Any other question from the audience, please? Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Zafar Iqbal, and I would like to ask you a question about the kind of script normally the American movies are covering and the awards that are associated with those movies lately. I've come across that the issues which relate to the heroic kind of things in the United States or in West, mostly they are awarded, these movies are awarded the best of the best, you can say, the awards in the developed world. But when it comes to the kind of awards which are associated with the movies or from the movies or on the subjects that are from the East, these are somewhat you see at the very low level. For instance, Slumdog Millionaire. You see, that's a story about someone who is living in a very downtrodden area in India. And that is the movie which has been taking probably a lot of awards in the United States. And if you can take a movie from Iran, someone who has been fighting for the rights of the minorities over there. So that movie was even given, but not like the all president's men or all goods men in the United States. You see, the subjects are very important. And all the good subjects, subjects which relate to the American society are mostly heroic and epical kind of things are, you see, awarded with Oscars and things like that. But when it comes to the Eastern subjects, usually these are the subjects which are in fact depicting the, you see, bad picture of the societies. So do you feel that this kind of politics in the awards is going on in the United States or in a developed part of the world?
I think more than politics, it talks about the people who are selecting those films. If you're talking about the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences, that is a group of how many people? You're part of the Academy. How many people?
It's around 8,000 now.
Around 8,000 now, but it didn't used to be that way. And they have different committees. And there's one specific committee that selects foreign movies. And this is changing now, and that's what I would like to refer to it. It didn't used to be a very diverse or inclusive group of people. They were, very, I would say, white and of
male.
A certain age and male. That is changing with the new guard. There's the CEO of the Academy started 6 years ago, and one of her ideas was we need to diversify this academy if we want to really reflect the world and the society we're living in. And in the last 4 years, there has been very consistent efforts to change that by including not only more foreign filmmakers that are not so known to people there, but also by including people of color and women in the industry, so that even the American films that get selected are more reflected of that world we live in. So, there are hits and misses, but 2 years ago, Moonlight, a film that is not your usual suspect, dealing with a very poor community in Miami and with sexuality issues, won the Oscar. So it could change. And she's in the Academy, so she could talk even more about that.
There is very much of a pressing need for diversity because for the reasons that you said. And I think that your question was also how the films, how certain countries are depicted and those films are rewarded and those images are somewhat stereotypical. I think that's what you're also getting at as well. And they depict an image of a country that is not in fact truthful or whole. And that's why there's, going back to the program that Maria started, there is such a pressing need to really create a vibrancy in the indigenous filmmaking of countries so that stories can emerge that are truthful and are relevant and powerful. as opposed to an outsider coming in and making them. So.
Here, from the students, if you like to ask something.
How do you propose to the younger lot to market their ideas, because they're full of wonderful ideas? How do you recommend that they market their ideas vis-a-vis alternate cinema or films that are depicting the true picture of the society, the stories of the struggles of people here, how they've come so far and managed to achieve what they have achieved? Because the niche is there, but it's very small. It needs a lot of marketing and intensive awareness to capture the audience and to make people come and see their films. So any suggestions to them, how can they market their ideas in films?
I think there's something to be said about authenticity, and I think the world wants to see more of that. And I think instead of chasing that idea that, okay, that I can market, or that's what the world wants to see, or that's what the investors want to finance. It's like, what story can I tell that only I can tell that story? What worlds do I know that people would love to know? And so I would like to go back to a filmmaker that has risen telling those very authentic stories recently, which is Barry Jenkins in the United States.
Sorry, who would want to fund a true story and who would want to see or bear the truth?
So what I was trying to point out is like, it's not easy, but if you do it and in earnest, it sometimes does rise to the top and establish careers. Or Winter's Bone, she could talk about Winter's Bone. This was not, I mean, he could be a downer.
Right.
It was not like, I wasn't like, yay, when I saw her movie, Winter's Bone, but it showed me this world that I had no idea. So it rose to the top, and it created like a star out of the lead of that movie. So can you talk to that?
No, sure. I think that I think there's a great deal of truth in what you're saying. And the one thing that I will say is there is, and I like to elaborate on what Maria brought up too, but there is, I think with the advent of streaming, it's very much the business model of streamers to create devoted audiences to specific stories. So they're not expecting a movie to be like a Bird Box and get hundreds of millions of viewers. It's mainly that they want films that'll attract a small, devoted, but steady following too. So those are films that will always have a specific voice too. So these stories that are powerful to you, they will eventually find an audience. Having said that, I think that even if a story is a downer, and going back to what Maria said, it's a downer or lacks hope or whatever, you have to make it entertaining. Like, we're in the business of telling stories. So if you're going to sit there and say a story that is just incredibly brutal and depressing and has, it gets, respectfully, it gets a little boring after a while. So you have to tell the story in a compelling enough way to really hook people's interest in it. And the thing with Winter's Bone is, yes, it was the setting was pretty brutal. It took place in a very depressed community of the United States, which is been very struck by methamphetamine, and which is a very deadly drug in this particular region. But the thing is the story itself of a young woman trying to save her home, and told in kind of a thriller element, did make the movie appealing and exciting. So people saw the movie as a result of it. So I think it just boils down to how you're telling your story. That's the thing.
The senior here in media department, I had a question, like, for a short documentary, basically if we are documenting on somebody's life or how he has spent his life, what kind of research or what kind of time should we spend on making that short documentary? Because for a short documentary or a documentary, you have to like research and you have to like spend the time before the shooting and before everything you have to do. You have to like research on his life. So how much do you think that we should do on that person specifically?
I think I personally have made a couple of documentaries. I think you have to immerse yourself in that world that you want to depict. To the point, I mean, when you immerse yourself in the world, you find out what the story is. Showing up to a place and just starting to shoot with no purpose could be very costly, to say the least, and will not lead to a good story. So I think the research for me is immersing yourself in the world so you could begin to understand what is the story here? Who are the characters that help me tell that story better? So if you go to a community, you hang out with that community and you start meeting people that you realize will allow you to tell the story of that community, if that's the purpose, right? Who are the main voices that could bring across what you want to talk about in that documentary? So I would spend a long time within that community asking a lot of questions, asking questions all the time to people, and so that when you turn on the camera, you have a purpose. You're not just chasing wherever the story is, because then your story will not have a focus, or your documentary will not have a focus. So that's
Great. Alex, I would like to ask you about that when you make a film, so how do you structure your work? That what are the basic steps? From where do you start, and what is the fruit or outcome? How do you see the outcome when you start it?
You know, I think you can never really know what the outcome's going to be, and I want the outcome to be as successful as it can be. But a lot of times I find that filmmaking is alchemy, and you just never know what you're going to end up with. And sometimes you can end up with something that's far exceeds your expectations, and then other times you will end up with a movie that for some reason or another, and it's so hard to depict to predict what that might have been, is flawed. I think, as going back to what this gentleman's question was, in terms of it's best to start with a great script and to really focus and spend, sometimes I have to say, years developing a really great script with a writer, and from there finding a filmmaker, then finding cast, then doing a budget, then finding finance, doing the paperwork, finding financing, and then those are the steps that will eventually get you into production. So that's essentially packaging the whole project, and that's usually what an independent filmmaker will do.
Yeah, my question is with both of you, because one remained with the training and one have like an award-winning filmmaker. Because being an independent filmmaker, one of the big struggle is to make yourself recognized, especially before the audience. And one of very important aspect to be recognized is winning the awards. So especially in the Pakistan, young filmmakers are not aware of how to present your work for different award shows, and what are the parameters on which different people juries decide whether they make few very good movies, but they lack few parameters. Because Alex, you are associated with the academy as well, so if both of you can tell us, being the students of media, that how to send our movies, and when we are planning it or we want to make it, then what are the specific parameters which are important to be considered in some nomination or somewhere?
Okay, so I will talk about our organization, Film Independent, also has an awards program called the Independent Spirit Award, which really happens the day before the Oscars, and a lot of the times there's a lot of overlap because the best movies are being made independently, as Alex said. So for the students first, you just don't submit your film to these awards. I think it starts by attending festivals, so that's the first step. So I would encourage students to research film festivals. Most film festivals do have websites that post their programs. So look at what type of films they're showing. That would be it's kind of a research project. See what festivals are out there where, for example, where the work of filmmakers from Pakistan is being exhibited the most, which festivals are the most important for, first regionally, then internationally, what film festivals are most likely to show films by people from Pakistan, for example, Cannes or Toronto, or even Sundance to a lesser respect, are showing films internationally. And then on the regional front, then there's many other festivals. So starting with festivals, I think, and then being noticed at the festival stage, because the festival is where also films could be noticed by other programmers from other festivals, and then by distributors, and then they rise to the top of awards. So I wouldn't start applying to an award. In fact, you know, some awards, like for example, the Spirit Awards, you can't apply to it if you have not attended certain types of festivals. So, Alex, what about the Academy?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think you can't really ever know what movie you're working on is going to rise to the top. It's so perplexing. And so I never make a movie thinking, oh, this movie's going to win a lot of awards, because you just never know. And the thing with the movie that I did work on that did get awards, you know, consideration, this was a movie that when I first started showing it to foreign sales companies, you know, basically people to take on the film and sell it to foreign companies, I heard, this is so depressing and bleak, no one's going to see this, it's just, you know, so if someone had told me during that time this film would be nominated for an Academy Award, I would have been shocked. So you just never know what a film's life is going to be. And I think you really just have to make movies that have stories that inspire you personally, and then kind of take it from there. I don't think you can bank on any sort of award. I don't think you can predict what movie is going to capture the Academy's attention or the Independent Spirit Awards attention, because there's so many factors that go into that. Sometimes movies come out and they're just extremely relevant at that time, and that will get awards, you know, consideration too. Like Moonlight, for instance, that was, you know, it was largely African American cast. It was entirely African American cast, and it came out the year after the Academy got a tremendous amount of pushback for all of its nominees being entirely white. So Moonlight was an absolutely beautiful movie, and it deserved every single awards consideration and wins that it got. But at the same time too, it was released at a very specific time that kind of really helped the movie rise to the attention that it did too.
I'm sure you're familiar with our cinema, with our production, so I request your input on the basic, how do you see it? Do you think it needs betterment, or do you think it's already good? Do you think it needs betterment, or do you think it...
To be honest with you, I'm not that familiar with Pakistani cinema.
Why do you think that is?
I'm beginning to, well, because we get very rare opportunities to see it. It doesn't travel that much. It's not that I can choose to see a Pakistani movie in the United States that often. I'm beginning to get more acquainted, and that's why I'm here for this program. And I feel I am very impressed right now with the quality of the work that I have seen here. But one thing that I have heard as I have been working on this program is that filmmakers need to perhaps work together more as opposed to compete with each other, and create this nurturing environment that I feel it's required for filmmakers to thrive. So I would speak to a lot of filmmakers in the United States. They have each other as a support system. You know, they rise up together, and they're asking each other for feedback and opinion on the work. And I think that is essential when you are sharing your work with people before you go out to shoot your movie. Like, what do you think? Get feedback before you shoot the movie, and not feel intimidated that you're sharing something before it's done. Kind of having a support system, I think that's the most important for filmmakers
Thank
to
you.
thrive. Alex?
I very much agree with Maria. I think she summed it up perfectly.
So, Alex and Maria, do you think that we should introduce some kind of different courses, or Pakistan and America, United States, they can have some kind of joint venture or collaboration work for the filmmaking and for the students to learn how to develop a film project, and how to take it to the different festivals, and what is your opinion about this?
Yeah.
Should we do this?
So the program that I run, Global Media Makers, seeks to do just that. The program is 4 years old. The first 3 years of the program, we worked in the Middle East. We continue to work in the Middle East. We're just growing the program now to South Asia, and it seeks to do exactly that. We're identifying filmmakers at the mid-level career and inviting them to a residency in Los Angeles for 6 weeks, where they get to work and hear from people like Alex. She just gave you a little sneak preview of what she teaches in Global Media Makers. And then we also seek to come back after we're going to host from 5 countries in South Asia. I believe we're going to have like 3 Pakistanis going. And when they return, we seek for them to help us identify organizations and institutions that are like-minded to Film Independent and Global Media Makers, where we could hold filmmaking workshops for the broader community. So I'm saying next year, we will return to Pakistan, and we will return with some sort of program and workshops.
That's
and
great.
we will be seeking out to organizations and education institutions to help us figure out what is the best partner to do this, what are the best filmmakers to invite to this, and what is the best subject matter to bring. And we do that in conjunction with the fellows who go and the organizations that get identified as potential partners. And we work with people like Tony in the embassy, who also help us navigate the different constituents and stakeholders here in Pakistan.
That's a very good initiative. Basically, we are looking for such initiatives so that as Zainab Dar has mentioned, that we have a lot of people who are come across with different ideas, and they are having capability to work a lot, but we are not having the right dimension where to go, where to lead. Alex, would you like to tell us about this program, that how you are going to facilitate Pakistani students and the South Asian students to make the film?
Thank you so much. I have participated in this program. I've been fortunate to participate in this program since its inception. Since its first year. I've been very lucky to work with Maria on this incredible initiative. I've had I've taught a workshop. My experience in it has varied. I taught a workshop, for instance, on Lebanon, which was very much kind of taking the start of a project, the development of it, working with writers, all the way to the distribution, marketing, finding film festivals for it. So it was a course that lasted for about 5 days and covered everything kind of in between in terms of the filmmaking. I also was very lucky to participate in the first Global Media Makers Summit, which was in Cairo last December. I went to Nepal under the sort of fact-finding mission that Maria creates as well. So those are the various, and also I've worked with the students. I mean the filmmakers I really correct that. They're not students. So the filmmakers also in Los Angeles as well when they are there in their fellowship, and we've exchanged ideas, and I've stayed in touch with many of them throughout the years too, which has been truly a great pleasure as well.
The
Thank you.
courses that
Yes,
she
sure.
teaches are instrumental, have been instrumental to the program, because we identified in the Middle East, in the case of the Middle East, and I'm beginning to get the sense of this happening here too. The lack of creative producers is a big problem.
Yeah.
Because they are the ones who will help sustain an ecosystem for filmmaking and for directors. So having someone like Alix show her practice and share her practice with filmmakers and help them learn about creative producing has been really great.
Please.
Hello, I am Amna. I'm faculty member here. I want to ask, why do you think there are few women in filmmaking?
Good question. Sorry. Why do you think there's few women in filmmaking?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. You know, I'm part of another initiative that focuses very specifically on that issue, and the numbers are incredibly depressing and daunting as to how few women work in the business, particularly on the studio side. I think it was like 2% of all films that were released in the United States were directed by a woman on the studio side of it too. There's so many reasons why. Directing was usually an old boys network. It was men hiring men. And it's, and I think the business has suffered just from that. Sorry to the gentleman in this room, but I think that the business has,
men, okay?
I think the business has suffered from just having that one specific perspective, where I think women are making huge leaps and bounds right now is in the television arena. And what's exciting to me is that there are so many initiatives where television production companies and powerful television producers who will say half of the directors on this season have to be women and mandate that. So there are women really making great quality television right now. And those are the women who are also, they're pulling a lot from independent filmmaking too. So independent filmmaking is also becoming kind of a place to start off as you know, a director if you're a woman, and then going into television, which is lucrative and provides a ton of, you know, great opportunities. So it's systemic, it's bias, there are many reasons as to why that exists, but hopefully I think there are a lot of eyes on it now that situation will change.
Thank you very much, Maria and Alix, for this wonderful discussion with our audience. Well, in Pakistan, we have Academy Award, and that is the only lady who has got that Academy Award, Sharmeen Ubaid Chennai. Of course, we cannot forget her, and we cannot leave her name over here. Thank you very much for the audience and my guests. I would like to thank you all. Inshallah, meet you again. See you. Allah Hafiz.